Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. I'm Nick Park. I'm taking us through a set of short teachings on dinner with Jesus. We're looking at times whenever Jesus ate with others. Usually it was sat at a meal table, but sometimes it was in other settings as well. But each time that Jesus shared food with people, there was something happened. There were miracles happened. There was wonderful teaching took place. There was lessons taught. And, it just seems that over food is where God reveals stuff. And perhaps that's fitting why we were talking yesterday about the Last Supper. And maybe that's why the sharing of food together is actually the way that Jesus has given us to remember his death until he returns again. Now, we've now reached Luke chapter 24, which is after the death and resurrection of Jesus on that first Easter Sunday. And Easter Sunday, of course, was only 3 weeks ago, and so many churches will have shared the account of the two men on the road to Emmaus, how they were downhearted because of all that had happened, and they had seen their hopes shattered, and they were on that road, and you know what? We don't quite know why they're heading away, The disciples are all waiting around in Jerusalem, but these guys, they're gone. They've said, we've had it. And somebody appears alongside them, and we know now it's Jesus, but they didn't recognize him. In Mark 16, it tells us he appeared to them in a different form. There was something about him, that his resurrection body, different from before his death and resurrection, and so they didn't actually recognize him. And so he's talking with them on the way, and they start telling him what's happened. And then it says Jesus opened up to them all the scriptures had to say about himself. And this was the greatest Bible study in history, the greatest sermon in history preached to two people. I've preached to crowds of thousands, and I've preached to tiny groups of people and one person even. But the greatest sermon in history, the greatest Bible study in history was delivered to just two people, as Jesus took each book of the Old Testament scriptures and opened it up. I mean, how wonderful that must have been. And suddenly these guys are getting all this understanding about who Jesus was. And it says then they reached the inn where they were going to stay the night, and they asked him to join them and go on into the inn. And it says that he went in with them and he broke bread and then disappeared from their sight. So that actually this was where broke bread, we presume it's not talking about actually eating, but that he broke the bread to pray over it and bless it, as was his custom. We know that from when he fed the 5,000, for example. But anyway, Jesus disappeared from their sight. And then they realized who he was. Then they knew. And here's an amazing thing. I love the Word of God. The Word of God has life and power. I can't get enough of the Word of God. But the Word without relationship is not enough. These guys had all this revelation from the Word. I mean, they'd received more from the Word in one afternoon than probably most of us receive in a lifetime, with Christ himself opening it up to them. And yet, even with all of that Word, they don't recognize who he is. They don't have that revelation. But whenever they meet with him over that relationship setting where he breaks the bread that they're about to eat, a profoundly intimate moment, then all of a sudden they know who he is, and he disappears. He broke bread with them, and now they knew him. And I want to tell you this, that you can gain wonderful knowledge from the Word of God, and I believe in the Word of God with all my heart. I encourage you to read the Word, meditate upon the Word, speak the Word, pray the Word, sing the Word. But the Word without relationship is not enough. And in the end, the crucial thing that will determine how we live is not how much Word we know, but it's how much we know the person who the Word is all about, and that's Jesus. We've got to know the living Word for the written Word to have its power in our lives. And again, these two guys learned that in a setting of a meal with Jesus. I pray that today you will know the Word. I pray you will grow in your knowledge and proficiency of using the Word of God, but I pray more that you will grow in your relationship with the living Word himself, Jesus Christ. May God bless you today. Join us again next time for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.